The email hit my phone while I was kneeling on a stranger's kitchen floor with half a dishwasher spread around me. The subject line said, "Your engagement gallery is ready." I almost cleared it until I saw Hollis and Pine, the studio that had taken our family pictures 5 years earlier. Megan and I had not booked anything, so I opened the message, expecting an old account mistake. The first photograph showed my wife under a row of oak trees with both hands against the chest of Ryan Mercer, a dental supply representative she had introduced to me at a work event. I had shaken his hand. He knew I was her husband. His arm was around Megan's waist, and a ring was turned deliberately toward the camera. At the top of the page, the gallery was labeled, "Megan and Ryan Engagement Session." My first instinct was to call Megan, then Ryan. I did neither. Megan had no idea. The gallery had reached me, and that was the first useful thing I had. Over the next 2 weeks she would keep talking, spending, and making plans as if she were the only person who knew where our marriage stood. What she did after that email arrived would turn the photographs into something far more damaging than proof of an affair. I was 38 and had spent 13 years fixing appliances, so the routine carried me through the next 20 minutes. I replaced the control board, ran a test cycle, explained the warranty, and put the kick plate back on straight. Only after I sat in my service van did I open the gallery again. There were 73 photographs. I did not need all of them. The first dozen made the situation clear. Megan wore a cream dress I had never seen. Ryan had on a navy jacket. They walked hand in hand, laughed for the camera, and posed beneath the same oak trees Hollis and Pine had used when they photographed the three of us 5 years earlier. Sophie had been 2 then, and had spent most of that session trying to run away from the adults. Megan had not only used our old photographer, she had gone back to the same park to create engagement pictures with a man who already knew I existed. I closed the gallery and finished my workday. A little after 6, I picked Sophie up from after-school care, because Megan had texted that she would be late at the clinic. Nothing in her message sounded unusual. When she came home, she kissed Sophie on the head, complained about a hygienist calling out, and asked me how work had gone. "Pretty normal," I said. She smiled. "You won against the dishwasher, I assume." I told her I had, and that was all we said about my day. I expected guilt to make her act differently, but she helped Sophie with homework and stood beside me at the sink while we cleaned the kitchen. At one point, she asked whether I was still on call the following Saturday. I looked over at her and said I was. I was trying to figure out if I should take Sophie to my mom's or have her come here, she explained. It was the kind of question she had asked for years, which made it more disturbing now than it would have been if she had suddenly started behaving strangely. After Megan went upstairs to shower, I opened the gallery on my laptop. The page was attached to the same client portal we had used for our family session. In the corner, the account name still read, Cole Family. I had created it years earlier. Megan had reused the old profile for the new session and changed the booking phone number and appointment email to her own, which explained why I had never seen the scheduling confirmations or reminders. What she had not changed was the older gallery, delivery contact still attached to the family account. When Hollis and Pine published a finished gallery, that legacy contact received the release notice too. The photographer had not exposed an affair on purpose. An automated system had simply followed the old account settings Megan had failed to replace completely. I clicked into the session details. The appointment had been booked 6 weeks earlier. Around that same time, Megan and I had not been discussing separation at all. We were still looking at hotel prices for a 10th anniversary trip we hoped to take the following spring. And my phone calendar still held the reminder, trip ideas with Megan. The engagement session had already been booked before that conversation. I wanted to go upstairs and demand an explanation, but the invoice stopped me. The session had already been paid for. That gave me a question more useful than whether Megan was cheating. I already knew the answer to that. I wanted to know whose money had paid for the photographs. Megan and I had separate checking accounts for personal spending and a joint account for the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and Sophie's expenses. We also had a smaller savings account we called the anniversary fund. For almost 2 years, I had moved money into it every payday, and Megan usually added money twice a month. The $485 photography charge had come from that fund. My most recent payroll transfer had landed 3 days before the payment. I had helped pay for my wife's engagement pictures with another man. That was the point when anger became useful. Until then, I had wanted an explanation badly enough to risk giving away the only advantage I have. Once I saw the payment, I cared more about what Megan believed she could keep using while I remained unaware. I saved the invoice and the account statement, then stopped. There was no reason to touch her phone, guess passwords, install anything, or drive past Ryan's house. I already knew enough to change the question. It was no longer, is my wife having an affair? It was, what do Megan and Ryan think is going to happen next? That night, I looked through my work calendar. For the last 4 years, I had been part of my company's rotating emergency schedule. Roughly every third weekend, I carried the after-hours phone, and Megan knew the pattern because it affected dinners, birthdays, and anything we tried to plan on a Saturday. Questions I had barely noticed before now sounded different. Are you on call the weekend, after Labor Day? Do you have the late rotation next Friday? What time do you think you'll be done, Saturday? I compared a few dates with things I remembered. One Saturday in May, I had been out until almost 9 because a refrigerator failed before a graduation party. Megan said she had gone shopping and then had dinner with a coworker. In June, I covered another technician's shift while she said her dental group had an evening training session. The engagement photographs had been taken on another one of my on-call Saturdays. None of that proved every absence involved Ryan, and I did not need it to. The mechanism was obvious. My job gave Megan predictable blocks of time when I might be gone for hours, with no reliable return time. The next morning, she brought up our anniversary trip. I've been thinking maybe we should hold off on booking anything, she said over coffee. Everything is expensive right now, and I don't want us forcing it just because it is 10 years. A week earlier, that would have sounded practical. Now I knew she had spent almost $500 from the same fund on engagement pictures. We don't have to book anything yet, I said. Relief crossed her face. Good. I just think we should be smart. I took my coffee and left before the irony showed on my face. During lunch, I searched Ryan's name, but I kept the search narrow. I did not care where he went to college or what his house was worth. I cared about responsibility. Did he know Megan was married? Yes. At the vendor event, she had introduced me as her husband, and Ryan had asked how long we had been married. Was he still married himself? Recent public material from a local charity event showed him with his wife, Claire. I did not need anything else about her. That was enough to establish the responsibility network. Ryan was not a single man who had been told Megan was already divorced. He was a married man who had met me and still posed with my wife for formal engagement photographs. For the first day, I had thought only about Megan and me. By the second, I understood there were 4 adults inside the consequences of what she and Ryan were doing. And 2 of us had not been given a vote. That evening, I made clean copies of what I already had: the gallery notice, session details, invoice, and account statement. I wrote down the dates while they were fresh and stopped searching. Over the next few days, I watched what Megan did while she believed nothing had changed. She kept asking about my on-call schedule, handled Sophie's activities, complained about grocery prices, and even sent me a link to a cheaper hotel in case we took a smaller anniversary trip. The ordinary conversations were harder to absorb than the photographs because they showed how completely she expected both versions of her life to keep operating at once. I was not calm, but I became deliberate. I slept badly, woke up angry, and once had to pull my service van into a parking lot because a song reminded me of our wedding badly enough that I could not concentrate on traffic. None of that changed what I needed to do. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I would not empty accounts, threaten Ryan, or use Sophie as leverage. I would get legal advice before changing finances. Stop voluntarily funding anything I no longer had a reason to fund. And keep the gallery hidden from Megan a little longer. She thought those engagement photographs belonged to her and Ryan. For the moment, they belonged to me too. The next morning, I called the attorney I had used when Megan and I bought our house. His office connected me with Rachel Kim, a family law attorney who agreed to speak with me that afternoon. I told her the short version. My wife had posed for an engagement session with a married man she knew through work. The photographer had accidentally sent the gallery to me through our old family account, and the $485 session fee had come from savings meant for our anniversary trip. Rachel asked practical questions. Were the accounts joint? Had I moved any money? Had I accessed anything that was not mine? Was the anniversary fund used for required household expenses? I explained that our mortgage and normal bills came from a separate joint checking account. My paycheck landed in my personal account, and an automatic transfer sent $175 every 2 weeks into the anniversary fund. Good, Rachel said. Keep it boring. She warned me not to empty joint accounts, hide money, interfere with ordinary household obligations, or use Sophie's expenses as leverage. If the transfer was discretionary future savings, however, I did not have to keep making it while I figured out what was happening. She also told me to preserve the original gallery email and financial records without altering anything or going into accounts I was not authorized to access. I asked about Ryan's wife. Rachel paused before answering. If you contact her, stick to facts you can prove. Don't threaten him through her, and don't recruit her into a campaign. She is directly affected, but what she does with the information is her decision. That answer was enough for me. Before my next service call, I canceled the $175 transfer scheduled for Friday. I did not touch the money already in the anniversary fund. It was a small financial change, but it mattered, because the transfer existed only because I believed Megan and I were building toward the same future. I was done automatically adding new money to a plan she had already used to finance another one. Megan noticed after my next paycheck. We were in the kitchen after Sophie had gone upstairs when she asked, "Did something happen with your direct deposit?" "No," I said, and she immediately pointed out that the anniversary account had not received my transfer. I dried my hands. "I changed where part of my paycheck goes." Her expression tightened. When she asked why, I told her we did not need to keep funding a trip we had not decided to take. Megan studied me. "I thought we were just talking about waiting." "We were. Waiting doesn't require the same transfer." She looked down at her phone and said I could have told her. I answered that she knew now. Instead of panicking, she let the subject drop. "Fine. I just don't like surprises with money." That reaction told me she still did not know about the gallery. If she thought I had discovered Ryan, she would not have been arguing about notification etiquette. She was annoyed that one source of expected money had changed, but she believed she understood why. For the next several days, she became more attentive without becoming more honest. She asked about work, mentioned reviewing our budget, and continued checking my on-call schedule. On Thursday, she asked whether I would carry the emergency phone all Saturday. When I said yes, she calmly told me she would handle Sophie's dance class and dinner. I did not follow her or change my schedule to catch her. If new information did not change what I could do next, I was not going to chase it. That rule mattered the following Monday. I opened our joint checking account to make sure the mortgage had cleared and found a $650 charge from Cedar Room events. I knew Cedar Room. A coworker had held a retirement dinner there. It was a small private event venue used for birthdays, showers, engagement parties, and receptions. Megan walked into the room while the transaction was still on my screen. "Oh," she said, "I meant to tell you about that." She claimed her mother was considering a larger birthday gathering and that the money was a deposit to hold a date. I asked, "Which date?" "We're not sure yet. You put down $650 without a date. There is a tentative date. I just don't know if Mom is keeping it." Her tone was irritated, not frightened. I asked what happened if her mother canceled. Megan said she thought most of the deposit could be transferred, and then dismissed the issue as something she and her sister would sort out. I could have called her mother. I could have demanded emails. "I did neither. Send me the details when you have them," I said. "It is a joint account." Megan looked at me. "Why are you suddenly watching every dollar?" Then she almost made a mistake, because I spent $400 on pictures. She stopped herself so abruptly that her mouth closed, and her eyes moved away from mine before she recovered. "Because I made one deposit without asking you first." I kept my expression still. "That would be a reason." She left the room. The slip did not prove anything. I did not already know, but the Cedar Room charge did. The engagement session had not been some fantasy that ended when the photographer packed up. Megan and Ryan were still spending money and holding dates. I checked Cedar Room's public website only far enough to confirm that deposits reserved dates for private events. I did not call the venue or pretend to be part of the booking. The joint account already told me what mattered. Household money had gone toward another future Megan was lying about. That ended my hesitation about Claire. By Wednesday night, I sat at my desk after Sophie was asleep and stared at Claire's public contact information. I knew the message could wreck her evening, and she had not chosen any of this. I finally wrote, "My name is Ethan Cole. Your husband, Ryan Mercer, is involved with my wife, Megan. I received something this week that I believe you have a right to see. I am not asking you to respond or do anything for me. If you want the information, I can send it." Almost an hour later, she replied, "This is Claire Mercer. What do you have?" I did not send the whole gallery. I selected one photograph, Megan and Ryan beneath the oak trees, her left hand against his chest with the ring visible. I included the session date. Claire answered in less than 2 minutes. When was this booked? She was not asking whether the man was Ryan. She recognized her husband. I sent the booking date and photography date, and told her Ryan had previously met me and knew Megan was married. After a long pause, Claire wrote, "He told me he was at a regional dinner that Saturday." That was the first new fact she gave me. Ryan had built his own version of the same system. Megan used my on-call schedule to create predictable absences. Ryan used business explanations to create his. Claire asked for the original email header and the session page showing the dates. I forwarded only those relevant pieces. "Thank you," she wrote. I left it there. I did not ask what she planned to do, and I did not warn Ryan. Upstairs, Megan was already in bed reading. When she asked whether everything was okay, I told her it had been a long day, and she returned to her book. I lay down beside a woman who still believed the most dangerous thing I had done was cancel a $175 transfer. By the next morning, Ryan knew better. I was loading tools into the van. The next morning when Megan's phone started ringing on the kitchen counter. She had gone upstairs to find Sophie's missing hair tie, and Ryan's name flashed on the screen before the call stopped. Megan came back down, saw the missed call, and called him immediately. By the time I came inside for my coffee, she was standing near the back door with one hand pressed to her forehead. "What do you mean she knows?" she said. After a pause, her voice dropped. "Ryan, slow down. Tell me exactly what she saw." She noticed me and ended the call. When I asked whether it was a work problem, she said it was something like that. I took my coffee and left. By 9 that morning, the first real consequence had reached Ryan. Megan called me that afternoon. She asked whether I had talked to anybody about us, then narrowed the question until she finally asked whether I had contacted someone connected to Ryan. I did not lie. I told her I had given accurate information to someone directly affected by what was happening. Her breathing changed immediately. "You contacted Claire." I let the silence answer. When she demanded to know what I had sent, I said it was enough for Claire to know the truth. "Do you understand what you've just done?" "I understand what Ryan did, and I understand what you did. Claire gets to decide what the truth means inside her marriage." Megan accused me of dragging Claire into something that did not concern her. I reminded her that Ryan had already dragged Claire into it when he posed for engagement pictures with a married woman. Then Megan made her own mistake. "Those pictures don't mean what you think they mean." It was the first time she acknowledged them. When she asked how I had gotten the pictures, I told her the source was not the important part. She insisted that it mattered to her, and I said I understood. We agreed to talk that night. For the next 40 minutes after I came home, we acted like parents because Sophie was at the table doing homework. We ate leftovers, listened to her talk about school, and waited until she was asleep. Then Megan sat across from me at the dining table. Her first question was, "How much do you think you know?" I told her that was an interesting place to start. She said she wanted to know what somebody had told me. Nobody told me anything. Our family photographer sent the gallery to me. She stared while I explained the old Cole family account and the automatic gallery. Release notification. "You changed the booking phone number and appointment email," I said. But the old family account still had my address attached to finished gallery delivery. The look on her face was almost disbelief. She had hidden the relationship long enough to plan an engagement, but the thing that exposed it was an old family profile she had treated as harmless infrastructure. Megan asked how much of the gallery I had seen. I told her I had seen enough to understand what it was. When she pushed further and asked whether I had downloaded everything, I gave her the same answer. Her jaw tightened as she told me to stop saying that. Then stop asking questions that do not change what you did, I said. Megan folded her arms. Ryan wasn't the reason our marriage fell apart. I had expected that defense, but not how quickly she reached for it. I didn't ask why the marriage fell apart. You are acting like we were perfect and I destroyed it overnight. Number, I am saying you built a relationship with a man who knew you were married, used money we were saving for our anniversary, and posed for engagement photographs while I was still putting money into that account. Her expression changed at the money. You don't know what that relationship was. I asked her to tell me when it had become what the photograph showed. She hesitated before finally saying, Ryan and I did not really become involved until after you and I were basically separated. We had never been separated. We shared a bedroom, finances, family events, and plans for our 10th anniversary. I asked her exactly when we had supposedly become basically separated. She tried to avoid a date, so I made her name a month. The month she chose came after the engagement session had already been booked. I did not correct her. That was when the gallery became more than proof of betrayal. Megan had attached her defense to a timeline the booking record could disprove. Who have you told that version to? I asked. She admitted she had talked to her mother and a couple of friends. Did you tell them Ryan came later? Her delay answered me. I gave her one off ramp. Stop using joint money for plans with Ryan. Stop telling people we were separated before the relationship started. Do not ask me to appear somewhere as a normal husband while you decide how to introduce him. We can handle Sophie, the house, and the separation like adults. When Megan asked what would happen if she refused, I told her I would not lie for her. She called that a threat. It isn't, I said. It is the boundary. She pointed out that I had already contacted Claire and accused me of trying to humiliate her. I kept my answer narrow. Claire was being lied to. If your mother is being given a false timeline, she is being lied to too. I am not going to broadcast our marriage, but I will not confirm something that isn't true. You want everybody to think I am a monster. I want you to stop asking me to make your version look cleaner. She shook her head. You think those photographs tell the whole story? They tell the date. The answer stopped her, and she left the table still angry, but she did not take the off-ramp. Over the next weekend, Ryan stopped sounding like a man preparing to leave his wife. I learned that from Megan without asking. Her phone was constantly in her hand, and twice I heard her say, I thought you said, before lowering her voice. On Saturday, I came home between service calls because I had forgotten to meet her. Megan was in the laundry room talking to Ryan. I thought you said this was already over, she said. No, I understand Claire is upset. What I am asking is what changed about what you told me. After a pause, she asked how long a few days was supposed to mean. I found the meter and headed back toward the garage. Megan came out and saw me. Are you enjoying this? She asked. When I made her explain, Megan said she meant watching everything blow up. That choice of words told me something. She did not say our marriage. She said everything. I didn't create the things that are blowing up. You contacted Claire knowing exactly what would happen. I contacted Claire knowing what had already happened. Megan accused me of wanting to punish her. I told her that if humiliation were the goal, I would have sent the gallery to everyone we knew. I had sent one photograph to one woman whose husband was in it. That evening, Megan stopped pretending the Cedar Room deposit was for her mother's birthday. The event may need to be canceled, she said after Sophie went to bed. I told her to cancel it, and Megan warned that we might lose part of the deposit. That is something you'll have to deal with. It came from the joint account, which is why I asked what it was for. I am not agreeing to spend anything else on it. She left the room angry. The $650 had once represented a future Megan, and Ryan thought was getting closer. Now, Ryan was backing away from the plan, because his own marriage finally had access to the truth. A few days later, Megan created a new problem for herself. My sister Laura called me during lunch. She did not want to get involved, but Mom had heard that Megan and I had supposedly been separated for months, and that I was having trouble accepting Megan was seeing somebody else. I stopped eating and repeated the phrase back to her. Laura said that was what she had heard. Things were supposedly over in the spring, and Ryan came later. Megan had moved the date again. At our dining table, She had named a later point and tried to call that our separation. Now, with other people, she was pushing the end of our marriage all the way back into spring. That told me Megan was no longer only defending herself to me. She was actively improving the story each time she told it. That isn't the timeline, I said. Laura asked whether I wanted her to correct our mother. Don't start calling people for me. If Mom asks, I'll answer, and Sophie stays out of it. After the call, I understood Megan's real bet. She knew I hated public conflict. I had always been the person who told family we were fine, even after a bad argument. She assumed I would rather carry the embarrassment privately than let people know my wife had posed for engagement pictures while we were still married. Privacy had become her shield. That evening, I confronted her about the story reaching my family. Megan insisted she had only told her mother we had been unhappy for a long time. Did you tell her Ryan came after we separated? She avoided the question. Your version is reaching my family now, I said. Maybe people are asking because of what you did to Ryan. What I did to Ryan. You contacted Claire. His house is a disaster now. His house is dealing with the truth now. She said I did not know Ryan and Claire's marriage. I know he told Claire he was at a regional dinner while he was taking engagement photographs with you. Megan's expression changed when she asked whether Claire had told me that. I confirmed it, and for the first time, some of her anger moved toward Ryan. He told me Claire already knew they were having problems. Maybe she did. That doesn't make the regional dinner true. I gave Megan the same choice one final time. Tell people whatever you honestly believe about our marriage. Tell them you were unhappy. Tell them I worked too much. I won't argue with your feelings. But if you say we were separated before Ryan, I will not support it. Megan asked whether I was planning to send pictures to her mother. I told her that if Diane asked me about a false timeline, I would answer accurately. You really want my parents seeing those? I wanted my wife not to take them. Megan looked away, and for a moment she could have ended the escalation by correcting what she had said. Instead, she answered, I am not rewriting my life because you are angry. You already rewrote it. I am just not reading from the script. 2 days later, she asked me to attend dinner at her parents' house. Her father was grilling steaks. Her sister and her family would be there. Sophie had already been invited. It would be easier if you came, Megan said. I asked who it would be easier for, and she answered that it was mostly for Sophie, because everybody would know something was wrong if I stayed away. Everybody already knows something is wrong. You've told them we're separated. I said we've had problems. You also told people Ryan came later. She accused me of making everything about him. I told her the problem was not Ryan's name. The problem was asking me to stand beside her as a husband, so the false timeline looked believable. For Sophie's sake, can we act normal for one afternoon? If you wanted privacy, I would respect privacy. You already gave people a story. Sophie can see her grandparents and cousins. I will take her there and pick her up. I am just not going to sit beside you and provide cover. That was when I saw how much Megan had counted on my role, not only my money. My on-call schedule created time. The anniversary fund supplied money. My silence protected the timeline. My presence at family events preserved the image. I stopped providing the last one too. On Sunday, I drove Sophie to her grandparents' house and left after making sure she was settled. Around 7, Megan's mother, Diane, called me sounding uncomfortable. Megan said you two had effectively separated months ago, she said. But tonight she was upset that you wouldn't come because you are angry about Ryan. I asked when he came into the picture, and she told me it was afterward. I sat down at my dining table. Diane, I don't need you to take my side, but the timeline Megan gave you isn't true. She asked how I knew. I explained that the engagement session with Ryan had been booked, while Megan and I were still living together as a married couple. We were also still planning our 10th anniversary trip. Diane went quiet before asking what I meant by an engagement session. I explained that our family photographer had sent me the gallery by mistake, because Megan reused our old client account. Diane asked whether I had proof of the date. I sent the booking date first. Then she asked whether there was a photograph. I hesitated before sending the same single, non-explicit picture I had sent Claire. Diane called me back. She told me Ryan came later. I repeated that to your mother. I reminded Diane that she had not known the truth. she answered. "I am not going to stop loving my daughter. I would never ask you to. But I am not repeating that story again." That was all I wanted. When Megan came home, she already knew Diane had spoken to me. "You sent my mother a picture." She asked for proof. "You actually did it. You kept betting I wouldn't." Her anger was not only about the photograph. She had assumed my dislike of public embarrassment would protect the timeline for her. Now she knew it would not. Ryan called while we were still in the kitchen. Megan took the call outside. When she returned, she was crying and angry. "He wants to cancel Cedar Room." When I asked whether she meant only the event, Megan shook her head. "The whole plan. He says everything has to stop until he knows what Claire is doing. He doesn't know when he is leaving now." That was the consequence. Megan had refused to imagine. Ryan had been generous with certainty when Claire knew nothing. Once his own house, finances, and marriage were at risk, the future he offered Megan became conditional. Later that night, I heard her on the phone with him again. "We already paid for it," she said. "You were the one who wanted the date." After a long silence, she asked, "So that is it? We just lose the deposit?" Her face changed at whatever he said. "Fine. Then lose the deposit." She repeated his words in disbelief. After the call, she stood alone in the kitchen staring at her phone. The engagement gallery was still sitting in the old Cole family account, the ring bright in every carefully posed image. It had started as proof of an affair. Then it became a timeline Megan could not rewrite. Now the promise inside those pictures was breaking, because Ryan finally had to pay for it in his own life. Sooner or later, Megan would insist once more that Ryan came after our marriage was already over. When she did, I would not need another investigation. I already had the dates. For several days after the Cedar Room plan collapsed, the house became quieter. Megan and Ryan were still talking, but their conversations no longer sounded like two people arranging a future. They sounded like two people deciding who had created the bigger problem. I heard enough fragments to understand the shift. Megan reminded him that he had said Claire was already thinking about leaving. Ryan apparently questioned what Megan had told her family. More than once she demanded to know why he was suddenly acting as if the consequences belonged to her alone. Before Claire knew, Megan and Ryan had shared one goal. After Claire knew, they had separate things to protect. Ryan had his home, finances, and marriage. Megan had the story she had already told her family, and the expectation that Ryan would be waiting when our marriage ended. Their interests were splitting. On Tuesday evening, Megan came into the garage while I was repairing a latch on one of my tool cases. "We need to figure out what we're telling people about us." I reminded her that I had already told her what I was willing to say. Megan answered that I had mostly told her what I would not say, and I told her that distinction was the important part. She said we could not keep letting different people hear different stories. "So tell the truth. There is no one simple truth about a marriage ending." I agree. Tell them we were unhappy. Tell them you felt disconnected, or that I worked too much. What you cannot do is move Ryan 3 months forward on the calendar, because it makes the story cleaner. She accused me of being obsessed with the timeline. "Number, you are trying to change it. I am refusing to help." Megan asked whether I wanted her to call everyone she knew and announce that she had cheated. I told her I wanted something much narrower. Stop asking other people to believe events happened in an order they did not happen. "Ryan thinks you are trying to destroy his marriage too," she said. Ryan took engagement pictures with another man's wife while lying to his own wife about where he was. I sent Claire one photograph. Whatever happens in his marriage now comes from that. Megan watched me, still expecting some larger revenge plan. But there was none. I did not need Ryan fired or Megan abandoned by her family. I needed the systems they had been using to stop working for them. My money no longer fed their future. My silence no longer protected their timeline. And my presence no longer made family events look normal. Claire now knew enough to stop unknowingly providing Ryan with a stable home, while he promised Megan another one. That was already changing everything. A few days later, one of our mutual friends, Caleb, called me. He said he had heard Megan, and I had been separated for months, and that I was angry, because she had started seeing someone afterward. "We weren't separated for months," I said. "We had problems, but we were living as husband and wife, sharing finances and planning our anniversary while she was involved with Ryan." Caleb said he did not need details. Good. I am not asking you to take sides. Just don't repeat a timeline you don't know is true. Caleb agreed, and I sent him no photograph and gave him no information about Claire or Cedar Room. The point was not maximum exposure. It was to stop Megan's version from becoming fact simply because I stayed quiet. When she learned Caleb had spoken to me, she came home angry and accused me of calling people. I told her Caleb had called me, and when she demanded to know what I had said, I explained that he asked whether we had been separated for months, and I had answered no. You are making sure everybody sees me as the bad guy. Number, you are telling people one relationship ended before the other began. I am refusing to confirm it. She said a date did not prove what our marriage had been like. It doesn't, I said. It proves the date. That was the distinction she still could not get around. The following week, practical questions forced us into a larger family conversation. Sophie had fall school events coming up. Thanksgiving was a few months away. Both families needed to know whether Megan and I would still attend things together, and Rachel had advised me to start establishing predictable routines for Sophie. If separation was becoming real, Megan suggested that we sit down with her parents because, as she put it, everyone is hearing different things. I almost refused, but Diane called separately and said she only wanted clarity about Sophie and the holidays. That was reasonable. We met at Diane and Frank's house on a Sunday afternoon, while Sophie stayed with my mother. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation stayed where it belonged. We talked about weekends, dance class, holiday plans, and the rule that Sophie would never be used as a messenger. Megan and I agreed on more of that than anyone might have expected. The problem started when Diane asked whether the family should expect Ryan at future holiday events. Not any time soon, Megan said. Frank looked at her. Is he still part of this? Megan glanced at me. Ryan did not cause the marriage to end. Ethan and I had been over for a long time before anything serious happened with him. Deanne set down her coffee. Megan, we have already talked about the date. Megan immediately shifted the wording. I am saying the marriage was over emotionally. We were staying together because of Sophie and the house. Ryan came into my life after I had accepted that. I had no interest in arguing about whether Megan had felt emotionally finished with the marriage. Feelings were hers to describe. But the factual sequence was not. Frank had not seen the evidence. Diane had seen, and Megan was now repeating the same version in a conversation that would shape how both families understood the separation. If I stayed silent, silence would become agreement. I opened the folder I had brought, and Megan went still when I told her it contained the dates. Frank looked uncomfortable. Ethan, if this is private, it is. I am only showing what answers what was just said. I placed the Hollis and Pine booking confirmation on the table. The engagement session was booked on the 11th of July. Then I placed the session confirmation beside it. The photographs were taken on the 22nd of August. Megan said that did not prove we had not been having problems. I agree. I am not proving we were happy. I am proving we were not separated before Ryan became serious. Then I placed the anniversary account statement on the table. The $485 photography payment was highlighted. On the 14th of July, the photographer was paid from the account Megan and I were both funding for our 10th anniversary trip. Frank stared at the statement. My automatic transfer was still going into that account every 2 weeks. We were still living together, sharing a bedroom, paying bills as a married couple, and discussing the trip. Finally, I took out one photograph, the same one Claire and Diane had already seen. Megan and Ryan stood beneath the oak trees. Her hand was on his chest. The ring was visible. I am not showing this because I want anybody to attack Megan. I am showing it because she keeps saying, Ryan came after our marriage was already over. That is not what happened. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Megan finally said, those pictures don't tell you what our marriage was like. I know. They don't tell anyone whether we argued, whether you felt lonely, or whether I worked too much. They tell us when you booked an engagement session and where the money came from. Frank leaned back before asking the question that ended the argument. Did Ethan know any of this when you told us the two of you had already separated? Megan looked at him and admitted that I had not known. Frank nodded once. So while he was still putting money into an anniversary trip, you were using that account for engagement pictures with Ryan. It wasn't like that. Frank looked at the statement. The bank record is exactly like that. Deanne touched his arm and asked him to stop. He did. I was glad. I did not want the room to become a line of people taking turns punishing Megan. The point had already landed. She looked at Diane. You knew he had that picture. I knew about the picture, Diane said. I did not know the money came from your anniversary account. Megan turned on me and accused me of planning the confrontation. I reminded her that she had scheduled the meeting and that I had brought the dates because she kept repeating the same story. She accused me of wanting Frank to see the photograph. I told her I wanted Frank to stop being asked to believe something that was not true. The meeting ended soon after. I gathered the papers and took them with me. I did not add Cedar Room, Claire's lawyer, or every excuse Megan had used during my on-call weekends. The booking date, the photography date, and the anniversary fund payment were enough. Together they destroyed the transition Megan had been trying to sell. She had not ended one life and then started another. She had been planning the second, while the first was still supplying money, time, and appearances. Frank walked me to my truck. I love my daughter, he said. I'm not choosing between you. I know. I never asked you to. He looked back toward the house. But she should not have asked us to repeat that story. That was the social consequence. Megan did not lose her parents. They still loved her and stayed in her life. They simply stopped repeating the version she had given them. 3 weeks later, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 6 minutes from Sophie's school. The first night there was harder than I expected. Sophie was with Megan, and the silence made the cost of the separation more real than any lawyer's office could have. With Rachel advising me, Megan and I formalized the financial separation through the proper process. The anniversary fund, photography payment, and Cedar Room charge stayed in the records. I did not magically recover every dollar Megan had spent, but my future income no longer flowed into a fund whose purpose had disappeared. Sophie's expenses and ordinary obligations were kept separate from the anger between us. The divorce process began, but by then divorce felt like paperwork following the actual collapse rather than the revenge itself. Megan still talked to Ryan. At first, she told me they were trying to figure things out. A couple of weeks later, the language changed. He says he can't make any decisions until things are settled with Claire. Ryan had once spoken in certainties. He had told Megan when he would leave, where their future was going, and what they were planning. Now everything was conditional. One afternoon, Megan came early to pick up Sophie. Ryan called twice while she waited in my living room, and she rejected both calls. He keeps saying we need to give it time, she said. I let her continue. He used to say, when I leave. Now everything is if Claire files, if the house gets sorted out, if his lawyer says this, if his finances work. The word if had replaced the ring. That was the real end of the engagement. It did not require a dramatic breakup in a driveway. The promises simply became conditions when keeping them started costing Ryan something. A month later, Claire sent me one final message. I have what I need. Thank you for telling me. I wished her well. We never became friends or partners in revenge, which was better. She had the facts that affected her, and I had no reason to manage what happened next in her marriage. By winter, Megan and I had a workable schedule for Sophie. We still argued about pickups and holiday weekends, but those were ordinary boundary problems instead of secret lives. In December, Sophie asked whether we would ever live in the same house again. I told her no. She cried, and I sat beside her until she was ready to get up. That was the cost that kept the rest of the story in proportion. I never posted the gallery, contacted Ryan's employer, or tried to turn strangers against Megan. Claire knew. Megan's parents knew the timeline was false. A few mutual friends stopped repeating it. Rachel had the financial records, and that was enough. After New Year's, Caleb mentioned that nobody was talking about a Megan and Ryan engagement anymore. I did not ask for details. Whether Claire filed, whether Ryan stayed in his house, or exactly when he and Megan stopped calling themselves engaged, could not change my life. Their plan had depended on 2 existing marriages continuing to provide stability while they prepared their exits. Once those marriages stopped doing that, the certainty disappeared. Megan eventually apologized after Sophie's winter music program. We were standing beside our cars with other parents nearby when she said, I am sorry for what I did to you. I know I made it worse after you found out. I told her I appreciated her saying it. There was nothing else to negotiate. By the following spring, the divorce was final, and the house had been sold because neither of us could comfortably carry it while rebuilding separate households. Megan kept her job, remained Sophie's mother, and stayed close to her family. I rebuilt my own routines. I never learned the complete outcome of Ryan's marriage. What I did know was that the future he and Megan photographed never happened. There was no Cedar Room event, no wedding, and no smooth transition into the life they had posed for beneath those oak trees. A few weeks after the divorce became final, Hollis and Pine sent me another automatic email. This one was only a seasonal promotion. Spring family sessions now booking. I almost deleted it before noticing that the account name in the footer still read Cole Family. I logged into the old photography account from the kitchen table in my apartment. Our first family gallery was still there. Sophie was too in those pictures, wearing a yellow headband that matched nothing and refusing to stay still for more than a few seconds. Megan and I stood behind her smiling at a future we assumed belonged to us. Under it was the newer gallery, Megan and Ryan, engagement session. I opened it once. The oak trees, the ring, and the confident expressions looked exactly as they had the first day. That was the strange thing about photographs. They freeze a fraction of a second and leave out everything that gives that second a price. The spouse at work, the spouse at home, the joint account, the fake regional dinner, and the promises that become conditional after the camera is gone. Megan and Ryan looked as though they were standing at the beginning of a clean new life. They had actually been standing in the middle of two unfinished ones. I kept the gallery because the legal records still mattered, but I turned off the marketing notifications. The primary email was still mine, and the account name still said Cole Family. Months earlier, Megan had treated that account like forgotten infrastructure from a life she believed would keep supporting her until she was ready to leave it. Instead, it sent her new future back to the husband she had assumed would remain in the background. The subject line of that first email stayed in my legal folder. Your engagement gallery is ready. The photographs were only the beginning. What Megan had not expected was that once I saw how much of my life had been quietly supporting hers, I would stop carrying it. If you enjoy stories where betrayal finally meets consequences, subscribe for the next one. This is Blood Never Lies.